Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Funhouse alongside the man himself, Mr. Martin
Ooh,
Popoff.
how are you?
You're not going to be a
Looking
poser
forward to
today,
this
right,
one.
Martin? No poser today?
No, I'm not a poser today. I'm
Only
absolutely
when we're talking thrash, right? That's
yeah,
it.
into all this stuff with the fiber. And when we get to the 90s thrash, I'll be even less of a poser, believe it or not. So yeah, that was crazy. There were a lot of really negative comments in there in the comments in that one, but oh
I
well.
don't know. Like I always say, people need to not take this stuff too seriously. It's like,
Yeah.
or no, not too seriously, not too personally. It's like
Yeah.
because not everybody likes the albums the same way as they do, right? Or as we do. So we totally understand that. But some people have a hard time with that. So whatever.
I'm not the kind of poser that was like, okay, let's do this show. I don't know anything about this stuff. It's like I used to know a ton about this stuff and be really into all these albums, and then the bloom kind of tapered off, right? So I wasn't a poser all through the '80s with it. It's just
Yeah.
that later on I stopped playing most of those records, right?
Yeah, to me, a poser is if you claim to like this stuff, but secretly you like Poison. That's kind of a poser to me,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Martin, you got sunshine here today?
Absolutely. Although it's cold again, but yeah, it's been sunny for a little while. It's nice out.
Yeah, there was a little frost on the ground here too, but it's going to warm up, and I think we're going to hit close to 80 Monday or Tuesday, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever, you know. So today we've got kind of like sequel to a show we did a couple weeks ago where we talked about that kind of first wave of American hard rock and metal in answer to the Brits. And today we're going to do a sequel to that one. This is an answer to those bigger bands that we talked about, Aerosmith, Kiss, and Blue Oyster Cult and Ted Nugent, right? So this is the kind of the second wave of American hard rock and metal. We have we've lumped a bunch of bands in together as we normally do, and we're going to put all their albums in a pile and we're going to rank them as order that we like them. So what do we got here, Martin? We got Angel, we got Starz, we got Legs Diamond, we got Derringer, we've got Rex, we've got Riot, and we've got the Gods, right? Did I cover them all?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
that's everything. Yep. Yep. And it all makes perfect sense. I mean, to me, growing up with these albums, this was like the baby band, the followers of Aerosmith and Ted Nugent and Kiss. These were the bands that were like the response to that. That stuff's doing great. So this is like the second wave of that first wave. A lot of the first wave coincides time wise with the second wave, but most of those bands started earlier by a little bit because the first American wave doesn't really even get going into, you and I have talked about this a million times, but Montrose really is the first thing because before that, it's all just Mountain and Cactus and Amboy Dukes and Grand Funk or whatever you want to include in there. There's just really nothing super impressive, right?
Yeah, and then we realize we haven't really included Alice Cooper in any of these discussions, but he's or they, I should say, are pretty early on as well, coming out of the kind of the psych camp and doing something that kind of predates most of this stuff.
Yeah.
And we, of course, recognize the significance of Alice in that band. So, but yeah, today we're going to talk about these lesser bands, and most of these, if not all of these, had very minimal success, right? As far as like selling albums and charting albums and things like that. And most of
Right.
them
Yeah.
were openers for a lot
All
of
of
the other
them.
bigger
Yeah.
bands.
There's
Yeah.
no success here anywhere.
No, and I think the
Yeah.
biggest disappointment is probably Angel, who I think Casablanca Records really were hoping they'd be the next Kiss, and maybe probably should have been, but it didn't quite happen. Yeah, I mean, geez, even Stars probably
Yeah,
also could have
a
should
lot of
have.
them. Yeah, we'll drop on that as we move along, but for sure. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean all of this. I'm looking at the whole dang list and it's all could potentially with the right management, the right label and the right single, any of these could have blown up pretty big, but I
yeah,
think
yeah,
yeah, we'll get into why they didn't. In fact, starting with sort of my first sort of look at this, but
yeah. All right, so we're gonna do three at a time. So Martin will
three at a
kick us
time.
off.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
got 21 total. So yeah,
yeah.
seven back and forth. So, okay. So my first one is Angel Sinful. It's the only one I don't have a physical of here. But yeah, 1979. There you go. So this is you know, this is a situation where, as I just alluded to, why didn't these bands do well? You could say that the bloom was off metal by this point. So once you get into the very end of the 70s, you and I've talked about many times that there's this sort of fallow period between whatever late 77 and the start of 1980 where everything kind of drops away and there's not a lot of success. And it's like punk has gone into new wave and the Cars are a big deal. Yeah, so that's Angels changing their look here. I remember this whole thing. I've only done books on two of these bands. So I have done an Angel book that's still available and a Riot book that's still available. But yeah, Frank talks about in there the post having any records thing where they're trying to change their look and stuff like that, right? So yeah, Angel Sinful. This is where they kind of went pretty poppy, very poppy. And it seems like, this is the Felix Robinson era. He comes in on bass. He's a pretty important part of the band. But again, we kind of learn Punky Meadows' true colors, because Punky Meadows in this band really does like this kind of pop stuff. And then Frank went along. And so essentially, Casablanca Records, they're not doing good. All of a sudden, they've just been burning through money like crazy, despite having all this success with Kiss and Village People and stuff. But we know Kiss at this point in 79 is trying some different things. They're going to Dynasty and Unmasked, and Angel's kind of doing the same thing. It's like this hard rock thing hasn't worked out for Angel at all. So they're trying this. So Sinful's my first one. White Hot from Angel is my second one. So two Angels right at the bottom of all 21. And I find this album to be pretty much the same kind of album. Some people even say Sinful is a little heavier, but I basically, and that's got this great heavy looking album cover. But no, not a very heavy album. So that's my number 20, I guess it is.
Yep.
And 19 is an even heavier album cover. The Godz, Nothing is Sacred, the second Godz album. And this band is known, they're a Cleveland band, hard living band, a lot of drugs and stuff, biker band. So there's your shot. They're associated with the whole biker situation as well. But the other thing is they're on Millennium Records, which is sort of a subsidiary of Casablanca. And what happens is this album was a big disappointment. You look at that album cover, you think it's going to absolutely rock. They sort of adopt a little bit of that, almost like that, a little bit of that rock and roll revival idea that was going around at the time. So it's not nearly as heavy, and it's got all these it's got this Slade thing where they're spelling all the words wrong on it. Gotta move, MUV, and rock your socks off, AUF. I'll be your love, LUV, love cage. Yeah, all of it's just kind of silly. It was a big disappointment. So that is my first three.
Okay, cool. All right. My number 21 is going to be Derringer. If I weren't so romantic, I'd shoot you from 1978. So this is basically the last album of the Derringer band. There you go. Don't like
more on this one a couple hours from now.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, in going through this catalog, all these catalogs again and re-listening to these albums, I find the Derringer band to be a missed opportunity because I think they could have been great. To me, only one of the three albums is really, really great. One of them is okay, and I find this one just really kind of late 70s slick hard rock. Easy Action's pretty good. Power Love is okay. Tonight, Attitude. They're okay songs, but honestly, I find I don't really even enjoy those all that much. The rest of the album is just a big kind of meh for me. I don't know. It just doesn't do much for me for whatever reason. I just feel like, with those two great guitar players in the band, it should be a little bit more exciting, and it's really not. So that's my number 21. Number 20, hold that Godz album back up again. Nothing is Sacred. I mean, you hit it right on the nail on the head. That looks like it's going to be this big, monstrous. Look at those guys. They look the part. It's like the second coming of Judas Priest right there. But most of that album is like just standard boogie rock. And Love Cage is probably my favorite song on here, and 714 or 714 is also pretty good. But the rest of it is just uninteresting, just boring, generic rock music to me. And it's just such a big disappointment based on how it looks. I mean, it looked like that should be the kick-ass album of 1979. It's not at all. Number 19, I'm going to go with Starz, Attention Shoppers from 1978, the third album. I wasn't buying these Starz albums at the time, but I can imagine if I was, after those first two really good albums, to come across that one. Yeah, they look like they're going to rock on the album, but it doesn't rock at all. It's honestly, it's pretty much kind of almost like a power pop album for the most part, and a not very good one either at that. To me, the two best songs are probably X-Ray Specs and Good Ale We Seek. And it's kind of sad that I'm picking those two as my favorite songs because they're even not all that good. But at least they kind of rock. I don't know. The rest is just pretty straightforward, just pop, hard rock and pop. It's not all that interesting after those first two albums. And I think they figured out that they made a mistake here because they write the ship on the next one. So, yeah, that's my first three here.
So you're seeing a theme here. We got a 79 album from Angel, a 78 album from Angel. Godz goes into 1979. So 79 is this year that we've always talked about as just this weird year when hard rock died, basically. And it was
Yeah.
being birthed in the UK, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just weird. It's almost like there's this answer. You had punk a few years earlier, and then the disco craze is full on swing. So they're like, well, we need to create more accessible music and, more pop hooks and things like that to sell records. But it did the opposite effect. People just started tuning out in droves, right? So it's a shame, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the Derringer pick, which I like I say, I'll be talking about that glowingly. But that's the 78 one. That's the marked difference from Sweet Evil. And so my next choice is Starz Attention Shoppers. And yes, I was horrified when I got this. After really loving the first two, this is basically a power pop or pop album. It's badly produced. It's got basically two of the Starz' best songs ever on it in X-Ray Specs and Good Ale We Seek. Great, complicated, cool, interesting metal songs. And then the rest of it, the entire rest of it, not heavy at all. It comes in the paper bag thing, right? Just like the, a little bit of Led Zeppelin in through the outdoor to that. Kind of cool. But other than that, and then they've changed from the black leather look to that look, which was the first clue. But yeah, so Starz Attention Shopper. Next, I've got Legs Diamond Firepower. I've got it in a little bit for Legs Diamond, unfortunately. Well, I won't generalize. Because we'll go in order. But yeah, so this is their third album. And again, the idea here, mine says 78. Sometimes this gets ranked as a 79 album, but yeah, 79 Cream Records. You've got a lyric sleeve on the inside. But basically, how you and I have talked about peaks and valleys albums, right? So the first two are more uniformly good, but this has probably, just like the Starz, weirdly enough, basically their two best songs ever on it, in Underworld King, absolute metal classic, and Midnight Lady. But then it's got Help Wanted and You've Lost That Love. And anytime anybody puts You've Lost That Love and Feeling on an album, I've checked out, right? I just cannot stand that song. There's another cover on here too, and Chicago's kind of boogie rocks, what the guys are looking like on the back. That's actually a pretty dated looking look for 1978.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just wanted to make the point again. So what I find interesting about doing this exercise is it was all about, to us as kids during this time, finding any bands whatsoever that were heavy, because there just weren't that many new bands that were heavy. Heavy metal was pretty rare from the UK or from the US when you get into this 76 to the end of the 70s period. So anytime these bands came out and looked like they were going to be roughly heavy, you would take a risk on it, and sometimes you'd win and sometimes you'd lose. Generally speaking, these are all wins, mild wins. There's not a lot of classics here. But so that's number whatever that is, and we're looking at about 5 in. Next is Derringer for me. So the 76 album from Derringer, which is that one right there. And so that's the first album after he became Derringer rather than Rick Derringer. You've got Vinny Appice in the band, and Danny Johnson and Kenny Aronson. There's your dudes. And this album is just basically kind of a transition from the poppy glam, but still fairly heavy Derringer. Those are good albums. Those that early Derringer stuff. But yeah, Let Me In's very simple. Beyond the Universe, pretty complicated. So it's kind of guitar-y, but kind of song based at the same time. Kind of pop as well. Sailor's pretty cool. I don't know. You think like Heavy Joe Walsh, kind of like a conceptually a Steve Miller, but a heavier band sort of thing. Uh,
Yeah, that's a good
yeah,
description. Yeah.
yeah. So there you go. So that's 6 in, whatever we're at, 15. I'm going to number these so I get this right. But there you go. That's my next three. 21,
Yeah,
20.
I'm gonna go. My number 18 is also gonna be the Derringer album from 78,
Okay.
76. Yeah, I mean, and they look kind of badass there, right? This is a great lineup, but I feel this album and the band in general to be a bit overrated. Kind of like a missed opportunity. That you're absolutely right. There's some very song-based stuff on here. It's kind of mellow in spots, kind of funky. But I think the vocals are well done. The guitars are nice and tasty. I think Sailor is a great song. I wish the whole album was like that. Beyond the Universe is also really good, but I find the rest of it just kind of like average, and it doesn't live up to the greatness that those two songs are. I think with their next album is where they kind of really figured it out for me anyway. Number 17, I'm also going to go with Firepower by Legs Diamond. So it's way slicker than the first two. Too many ballads. I think the songs that are good are really good. You mentioned Underworld King. Awesome song, one of their best songs, but
Yep.
unfortunately on an album that isn't all that good. Midnight Lady is great. More Than Meets the Eye is cool. Chicago kind of rocks too, but the rest of it, and I don't know what they were thinking doing that cover. Man, it's just awful. It's just awful. It like brings the whole album down. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my number 17. My number 16. I don't. I have a hard copy. I haven't been able to track it down. Rex. Where Do We Go From Here from 1977. This is their second final album. To me, yeah, with that. I mean, both the album covers are ridiculous, but obviously they were promoting him above all, right? There we go. They're kind of looking pretty cool there. I don't find it as interesting or as heavy as the debut album, but there are some good songs on here. Do Me is good. I love the title track. I think that's nice and catchy. Seven Come 11. And man, the raunchy Running Wild is just so good. And you know what, Martin? And maybe you'll touch on it. I find on those two Rex albums, man, the seeds of what would later be known as hair metal is all over those two records, all over them. The attitude, the guitar sounds, the vocals, I mean, everything. But it's a good album. I think most of these, from like this point on in my ranking, I think most of these albums now I like pretty much, and I think it's a good album. Just, it's going to come in where it's going to come in. But I like it. I just think that the first album is much of a better one. But yeah, those are my next three.
All right. Interestingly, it looks like I'm still not into. I'm really liking these albums a lot. So my next three are still kind of down a little bit. People love the Godz debut album. I think is a little overrated. It's okay. It's good production, produced by Don Brewer. But it's a little meat and potatoes rock and roll. But it can be pretty heavy at times as
You
well.
stole my
Got
line there, Martin.
Oh yeah, gotta keep it running is the absolute classic. It's the God's credo, and then the massive Candy's Going Bad golden earring cover is really cool too. Under the Table is good too, but yeah, good beefy production on it. The Gods are rock and roll machines. There they are, illustrated on the back, looking
Yep.
like a Southern rock band. They basically are a Southern rock band, really, on both of these albums. Ohio can have Southern rock bands. It's a kind of, there's a lot of jokes
Not
about
all that
Ohio.
different from like Molly Hatchet, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe not as good.
So there you go. And then next I've got Coliseum Rock by Starz. This when we got this, so this is the second Starz album in 1978. Um, we were happy that it was heavier, but the Jack Richardson production is very anemic and thin. It's the rhythm section is not great on it. The performances are not great. It's just that the songs are heavy, which is good, right? The songs are good, but it's just kind of got this polite sound to it that really bothered me, and still does. But Where Will It End and Don't Stop Now are the two super heavy ones. So Young, So Bad could have been a big hit. So yeah, they corrected on Coliseum Rock. I mean, after Attention Shoppers into Coliseum Rock. But cool album cover too. It's such a whole Kiss concept of these guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a very Kiss album cover. Yeah, you could imagine the Kiss logo in there, and
Oh yeah.
this their covers, eh? Um, so we got that, and next we've got Riot Rock City. I bought this as a total risk too, just thinking it's probably going to be heavy with a name like Riot and that awesome seal, and the name Rock City, and and I remember finding this really interesting. The bass player's name is Jimmy Iommi, so we thought as kids, oh, maybe that's Tony Iommi's brother. Who knows, right? But anyways, got this. Really good production on it for an indie release, essentially. But the songs are a little barroom, kind of just a little dated. I remember getting it thinking, yeah, good new heavy baby band, but I'm not feeling a ton of personality here. But there's some really good tight playing, Desperation Warrior. I mean, there's some good stuff on here, Overdrive. So, yeah, for some reason, it's almost like we had taste or something already at 14 years old. But so we're playing it and thinking this definitely satisfies the heaviness thing, but there's something lacking in the personality of this album that just didn't send it right to the top of our lists. There you go. That's 15, 14, and 13.
Arguably the heaviest band we're talking about in this bunch of bands today, right? Yeah.
Yep.
All right, number 15 for me, I'm going to go with Angel White Hot, their fourth album.
Okay.
Very commercial sounding. In fact, yeah, you look at the cover and you're thinking, this is going to be epic. This is going to be something else. And it is something else for sure. But I find that the songs are well written and they're very memorable. Don't Leave Me Lonely. I don't know why that wasn't a hit. I mean, that's a really, really good song. Ain't Gonna Eat My Heart Out Anymore. Under Suspicion rocks pretty hard. There's more. It's funny because I find like on the album before, I felt there wasn't enough keyboards. Now on this album, there's way more keyboards and less crunchy guitars on here. And they're obviously going for a more accessible sound. But I don't dislike it. It's not one of my favorites, obviously, of Angels. So that's my number 15. Number 14, I'm going to go with the Godz. So self-titled debut. Yeah, I mean, you said it exactly as I was going to say it. It's like meat and potatoes biker rock. That's just what it is. It's very accessible. It's very southerny sounding in spots. I agree with you. I think Gotta Keep It Running, fun song. Guaranteed is also pretty good. Go Away rocks. But the sad thing is, Martin, I think their cover of Candy's Going Bad by Golden Earring is probably my favorite song on here. Usually when a cover is your favorite song, that means trouble. I agree with you. The production is really good and the guitars sound great. I just don't find the song. I don't know. I don't find this band as interesting as a lot of people seem to find them. I don't think this is a classic 70s band. I think they're okay, but I don't know. I'm not hearing what's so special about them based on what so many other people I've talked to think. But yeah, cool looking guys. They look the part. They don't sound the part to me. But that's my number 14. And number 13, Hold Up That Coliseum Rock. That's my number 13 by Starz. So yeah, so to me, this is kind of getting back to what we do so well after the disaster that was Attention Shoppers. So Young, So Bad is really good. It's a good rocker. It's catchy. Take Me is kind of heavy. Don't Stop Now. Title track is a great instrumental. I mean, Jesus, you almost wonder. It's like they could have done more instrumentals, and I would be totally on board. It's a Riot is also really good. And not all of the album is top notch stars for me, but I think it's a pretty solid return to form for them. Too bad by this point nobody's buying, nobody's listening, right? But that was kind of the story of Starz. So, but yeah, decent album, good return to what they do best.
Yeah, so Jack Richardson for Nimbus Productions, so part of the Bob Ezrin camp. But Jack Richardson wasn't a heavy metal guy. Produces Soundstage in Toronto, so they went to Toronto for it. Although they're a New York band, right? Allcoin Management, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm up, right?
Yeah.
Number 12, Legs Diamond, Legs Diamond. The debut Legs Diamond album. I think I got this after a Diamond is a Hard Rock, but yeah, 77. They put out 2 albums in 77, so this is early. They were somewhat touted as America's Deep Purple, the same way that Angel kind of was a little bit as well. And it's a pretty heavy album. It's only got 7 songs on it, but Deadly Dancer, I can't even remember what the heavy ones were on here. I think Stage Fright, it's not the music. But good production, but it had also for me, again, a little bit of that Riot problem which is the same kind of thing I feel about early Moxie. I think Moxie on the first album is a little overrated. I think they get a lot of personality by riding high. But I'm feeling like a lack of personality on here. The production's really good. It just feels like the arrangements, maybe the songwriting is a tiny bit lacking, but yeah, just good solid hard rocking, perfect second wave American metal idea. Next is Angel on Earth as It Is in Heaven. So basically, the idea here, Eddie Kramer produces. They get considerably mellower on here, but it does have like some good rocking tracks on it. The funny thing about it, it's again peaks and valleys versus what came before. The odd thing about it is it's got really brutally noisy production, right? It's just some weird cavernous kind of distorted drum sounds, and everything's quite distorted on it. But again, Eddie Kramer's in here, and what is Eddie Kramer known for? Kiss Alive, Rock and Roll Over, right? It's just that whole Casablanca thing. Well, maybe this guy can turn you into hit, but it didn't work. Obviously, we got the great. I guess it's time to do the logo again, right? Here we go. Angel logo. There you go. Turn it upside down. There we go.
Look at that.
Still says Angel. There we go.
Best
Cool album.
logo of all time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then my number 10 choice is the Second Legs Diamond album. A Diamond is a hard rock. This most definitely is a hard rock. This is a good, solid hard rocking album. The title track is amazing, which unfortunately is just called Diamond is a Hard Rock and not A Diamond is a Hard Rock, like the way the album is. But yeah, Evil's on here. I think I got it. Just good quality, produced by Eddie Leonetti, who was also involved with Angel. I don't think he did a very good job for Angel. He did a much better job here because this is very Deep Purple-esque. Mike Prince, keyboardist, rhythm guitar, vocals, not lead vocals, is one of the most important guys in the band. So you do get a lot of that Hammond organ, John Lord thing on here. But yeah, just good quality, rock and hard rock. The one thing that's not hard rock about this album, I remember looking at this and don't take a picture of your drummer with a mallet in his hand.
No. Yeah, what's that all about?
Yeah, standing at a timpani. No, that's not the way you take a picture of your drummer. You got to have that big shining, all that chrome and all that stuff, right? So yeah, I always thought that was kind of funny, but yeah, great album cover. Killer illustrated album cover. So that is my 12, 11, and 10.
Cool. All right, my number 12 is going to be Angel Sinful, fifth album. Compact album, 3.5 minute long songs throughout the whole thing, really commercial sounding. But again, I think some of the songs are really good. I think Don't Take Your Love, another one that Angel's got like this handful of songs from their catalog that like you listen to them today and you're like, how is this not pushed as a single, right? I mean, these could have been hits here. LA Lady sounds to me like Kiss or Slade, right? It's got that kind of like boogie rock thing going to it. Just Can't Take It's pretty catching. You Can't Buy Love is pretty rocking. Bad Time is another strong one. I mean, I think there's lots of memorable songs here. And it's got this mix of the hard rockers and keyboard lace pop, a dash of prog. I mean, it's just basically everything that Angel does pretty well. It's not a great album. It's not a terrible album. That's my number 12. Number 11, I'm going to go with On Earth as It Is in Heaven by Angel, third album from 1977. I agree with you. I think there's some strong material on here, but it just seems lacking when you look compared to the first two. And I think I listened to this album and it's almost like Greg Giuffria is like missing from this album. So it's funny how like the albums that come after this, we complain there's too much keyboards. On here, there's not enough keyboards, and it's just you miss him a little bit. But it's got some good stuff on here. It's missing also that proggy element, I think, from the first two albums, which is maybe the whole Giuffria thing. Can You Feel It? Rocks. She's a Mover is really good. White Lightning is kind of weird, like kind of early funk rock, kind of bizarre, but it's not too bad. On the Rocks is good. I do like Cast the First Stone because to me, that sounds like it could have come off the first two albums. That's really kind of proggy, really nice keys and guitars on that. So, yeah, it's a pretty good album. And then I'm going to go with Riot Rock City as my number 10. So, pretty solid debut, I think. And this is a band that would improve leaps and bounds with that second album and going forward. So there's a, you listen to this album and then you listen to the second album, and there's a gulf there. They really kind of matured pretty quickly, but it's still a pretty good album. I think Warrior is really good, speedy rocker. Title track seems very influenced by Kiss. Overdrive's got like a Montrose feel to it. Angel is pretty rocking. Hearts of Fire, another good rocker. I think it's a pretty solid record. It's just not quite up to the standard that starts with the next album going forward. So that's my 12, 11, and 10.
All right. Next, I'm going with Rex. Where do we go from here? And again, we're into the idea of peaks and valleys albums. I think the peaks on here, your 7 Come 11 and Doomies and Running Wilds and what else? I don't even know what the other heavy ones. There's 1 or 2 other heavy ones. I think the heavier ones on here are better than the heavier ones on the previous album. The previous album's a little more uniform. And then it's got, the poppy appeal of where do we go from here. I love that idea that you had about this being, pre-proto hair metal, because it definitely feels that way. It's definitely Van Halen-esque party rock. It also breaks a lot of rules like Van Halen as well, frankly speaking, I guess. And again, we got Eddie Lee and Eddie involved again in the production. And the production on this is it's a little rough and chaotic compared to the debut. They've kind of loosened up a bit on here. So I think there's actually a little more personality, but I remember getting this as a kid and thinking there weren't enough heavy tunes on it. But, I like it a lot now. And next we've got Riot and Narita. And when this happened, this was awesome. I mean, this is literally one of the heavier albums of the, well, you know what? We could put Ram Jam in here actually too. We should have maybe.
Yeah, we could have, right? I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Maybe we can do that on the fly. Eh? Where would you put the first Ram Jam album?
God, probably right. I don't know. It's a really good album. I like the second album better, but probably right around the midpoint, maybe 11 or 10, something like that. Maybe. I honestly, Martin, I'd probably put both Ram Jam albums in the top 10.
Yeah, I would probably put Ram Jam, the debut, around 17 out of 21,
okay.
15 out of 21, and I would probably put the second one at number 1.
Wow. Okay.
So there you go. But I bring that up because I've often called that one of the heaviest albums from America in all of the 70s, and this is a candidate as well.
Yeah.
This is actually a really good rock and a lot of more personality. They're almost like the heavier, more personality version of Legs Diamond in a way, right? But yeah, Waiting for the Taken, 49er on here. Road Racing is incredible. Like it's like a proto speed metal tune. Do It Up is really cool. Great sparkling production on here. Excellent kind of speedy instrumental in the title track, named for Japan's airport, right? So yeah, this was a really, and it's on Attic Records in Canada, so it was all over Canada because Attic is a fairly big, well distributed label in Canada. So Riot came out up here on Attic, and huge I think a big improvement over the debut. And then I've got Rex at number 7. As I say, I got this as a new release, going to see Rex, Ted Nugent, Bebop Deluxe. This is my first major concert in Spokane, and picked this up. And the album cover doesn't look, but it didn't, I wouldn't have bought this, right? But had I believe what happened is I saw them the night before and we were still in Spokane. Then we go to the record store. There's a big display of this, believe it or not, in the store, like posters and all, albums all strung up. And, but now that I knew the band and I knew they rocked, because they totally rocked in that show. They were the backup act, support act. There they are, all dressed in red, not looking very rocking at all. But yeah, this is basically an Aerosmith / Ted Nugent / Derringer Sweet Evil style hard rock album all the way through. Got a cover of I Can't Explain on it. I kind of wish that wasn't on here, but everything else they wrote, I believe. Yep. Actually, no, there's Stay With Me on here, but produced by Eddie Lee and Eddie again. And they were part of the Leber Krebs camp. David Krebs is a buddy of mine, right? Talk to him regularly. And this was a band that he was trying to he put it this way, he was trying to make this band work, But then kind of management pulled Rex away and sent him on to his other career, right? As a teen pop star and then a TV star and a movie star and all that stuff. So it kind of killed the band at the same time because David really believed Rex was the star of the band, and those other guys, you don't need them kind of thing. That's the way it sort of felt. But yeah, good heavy album there. And that's it. That's my 9, 8, and 7.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Martin, but I think that those album covers on both of those Rex albums didn't give them any chance to survive and be really successful because it's the music is pretty damn rocking and heavy, but yet you look at those album covers. Quite frankly, Rex himself wasn't really looking like a heavy metal guy.
Yeah.
If I, like you said, if you hadn't seen them live the night before, would you have ever given that album a chance
Yeah.
just seeing that sitting in the record bins,
Yeah,
right? Never.
absolutely
No,
not. No, no.
no.
And even the song titles are not particularly crazy, right?
Yeah.
There's literally Violent Playground on here, but everything else, well, Dead End Kids as well. But Call Her Easy, Stay With Me, I Can't Explain, Feeling Better. Yeah, it's pretty tame, all up and down. Yeah.
Yeah. He's looking on the album cover like, please buy me. Please. I promise you'll like me.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Dumb band name too, right? Rax.
yeah, no, not very good. Not very good. All right, my number 9 is Starz Violation, second album, 1977. To me, it's not quite the metal hard rock. I don't even know if I call Starz metal in general, but it's not quite the classic that the debut is for me anyway. But I think it's pretty damn strong and it's pretty catchy. You know what's really funny? The more I listen to Starz, the more I think if they really wanted to just be like a power pop band, they would have done a great job because like there's an underlining sense of power pop throughout all these records. That even though some, a couple of the albums are pretty heavy, if they wanted to just kind of change course and just do that, I think that would be really good. Like Cherry Baby, that's kind of like a power pop song, really good. Rock Six Times is pretty cranking. I like the title track. Kind of sounds like Kiss. Subway Terror All Night Long, really good. And then you get that song Steady, which is this moody, bluesy, heavy thing. I think it's a really good album. I just don't like it as much as the debut. So that's my number 9. Number 8, I'm gonna go with the Rex album. Yeah, Trouble is good. 10 Seconds to Love is pretty groovy, pretty heavy. Dead End Kids, Rock and Roll Dreams, kind of like a hard rock and boogie. Violent Playground kicks ass.
Buy me, buy me,
Buy me,
buy me.
please buy me. I'm good looking and you know it. If you're a chick, buy me. Yes. Yeah. And then you look it over and they're wearing the red. Yeah, it's terrible. I really like the way the guitars are produced on this album. I think there's some really good guitar work, and I think it's a very solid record. Like I said, it's just, man, the way it was marketed, both of those albums just is puzzling. And then number 7, I'm gonna go with Sweet Evil from Derringer. That's right there. Interesting how you and I both have different 2-on-1s, right? With
Yeah.
So here is where, to me, this band really clicked. This is a fun hard rock record. Sitting by the Pool is great. I love Keep On Making Love. That's just nasty. Let's Make It is just good, furious hard rock. And then Driving Sideways is so good. Title track is moody and hard rocking. I think this is a really good album. And this is what I would have liked to have heard from this band on all their releases. But unfortunately, I only get the vibes from this one. But and they look total badass on there. I mean, that's an album cover, right? Forget that Rex album cover. That's an album cover right there where you want to kind of portray, the kind of music you're playing. So yeah, that's my number 8, 9, 8, and 7.
Okay, next I've got Angel Angel, their absolutely drop dead classic debut. This is a progressive metal classic, basically. You could call, right? I mean, it's funny. We never really talk about Angel in the whole progressive metal story, but this is sort of like that. This is truly a America's Deep Purple type album. They take a lot of chances on here. There's some heavy stuff. It's heapy. It's Uriah Heep as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's only 3 songs on side 1, and then basically 4 on side 2. And you got Angel theme, right? Just sort of like Kiss theme, right? And of course, they're on Casablanca, and they're all dressed up in white. This is let's see if this proves me wrong in the inner sleeve, because I think they hadn't got there yet. That's right. So on the inner sleeve, they don't have the white concept yet in these early pictures. But yeah, so they were marketed as the good cop, bad cop versus Kiss, all black leather and spit and blood and all that. But Tower's an absolute classic. They're probably their most famous song. Rock and Rollers is great as well. Yeah, they got a long time. Like, doesn't Boston have a long time? I think it's a long time, right? Or what is that what it's called? Yeah. So it's funny, but it kind of fits in the Boston world too. You know, Angel, self-titled Angel, Angel, Boston, Boston. Boston is kind of a little prog metally, right? As
Lots
well.
there.
Yeah. So this could have been a hit. But
Sure.
it's maybe a little bit too uncommercial, I suppose. Just a little bit too proggy. So next we've got Starz. And I would say out of all the bands here, this is the band that could have should have been the biggest out of all of them. It's like very much like Kiss, but a little bit more like Thinking Man's Kiss. A little more going on, kind of thing. They got the look, the photo sessions. Look at that. That's standard 76. Embossed logo, great logo. Then you got your inner sleeve where they, little conceptual. They went a little further with it, right? You got the patch, so you knew they were making patches for them already, right? You got the single song lyrics, right? Showing, look how we're Led Zeppelin. We can print an inner sleeve with one of our songs
Just the
having the
one.
lyrics, right? And it's
We know it's going
heavy.
to be a hit. That's the only one you need to know the lyrics for, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this actually produced by Jack Douglas. So you've got the Aerosmith connection there, and it's just a good, no nonsense, well produced, but bare bones enough, kind of mid rangey, but that's fine. Good guitars. Should have been a massive, massive band. Um, Famously and maybe notoriously cut down a little bit by a fairly negative Rolling Stone review of this album, right? So that is my number 5. My number 4 is Violation. So peaks and valleys a little bit. I think the better songs on here, or the heavier songs on here, are better songs than on the debut, and that would be Subway Terror and Violation. Man, such great everything from this catalog. Again, you can imagine, and one of those fantasy situations where I would love to see them wipe all the vocals and put Paul and Gene vocals on all these songs. I mean, this is a basically, if this was a Kiss album and it was those guys singing, we'd be talking about this in the same realm as Destroyer. It's just that good. It's just that same sort of thinking man's variety. Good stylistic differences, but nothing completely wacky where you just think it's all like a good band writing good stuff. And this and the Starz album itself would be more like the Rock and Roll Over version of this, because I think it's just a little less imagination, but still just solid throughout. So both of these albums are perfect Kiss albums. So that's my 6, 5, and 4.
It is a shame, the whole story of Stars. I mean, just I remember, Martin, years ago, I went to go buy the Stars catalog on CD, and to do so, you had to call Richie Rano up on the phone and place the order over the phone and talk to him, right, and give him a credit card. He kept me on the phone for like an hour and a half, telling me the whole sordid story of with the
Wow.
management, the record label, and I was like,
Yeah.
and it's such a sad story. And you could tell he's still, all these years later, he's still really bitter because he knows, just like you said, in his heart, he knows we should have been huge. All these other bands got bigger than us, and we had the better material, the better songs. We were a better band. It's
Yeah.
really, really sad.
You think of those endorsement ads with Joe X Dubé. You think of how good looking Michael Smith was. Michael Lee Smith. Rex, by the way, we didn't mention Rex's brother, right?
Yeah,
So you got Rex Smith and you got Michael
yeah.
Lee Smith here. So yeah, just there literally was not. There literally is not a single part of the look or sound that just wasn't screaming smash hit in
Yeah,
76, 77. Yeah.
yeah, yep. All right, my number 6 is going to be Legs Diamond. A Diamond is a Hard Rock.
Nice.
Another one that like a lot of the elements of this album we would hear like just I don't know 6 7 years later in a lot of the glam and hair metal bands, right? But this is a little more oomph to it, right? You got the keyboards, the Deep Purple prog keyboards, good mix of nasty rockers, a little bit of prog, some melodic stuff, and man, how about that flute on Evil? I know you don't like flute in rock music, Martin, but that's like so out of like left field. It's so cool when they drop a little flute here and there. Really good album. Love the cover, like it a lot. My number 5 is going to be Legs Diamond, Legs Diamond.
Yeah.
Again, the Deep Purple and Uriah Heep elements are here. Love the Hammond organ on here. Big guitar riffs. Love the vocals. Tunes are catchy. I mean, rock and roll, man. It's not the music. Rat Race, all really good. Another album, I think, you can kind of see this is a band that maybe with the right breaks could have been, a lot bigger. But I always thought that the album cover is kind of cool, but they couldn't have picked a more hard rock or metal looking guitar. A solid body, a semi hollow body Gibson. Granted, I don't have a Gibson,
Yeah.
but I got one. It's not a heavy music guitar for the most part. I know Alex Lifeson made a career out of playing
Ted Nugent too, right?
and Ted Nugent, yeah, but it's
Yeah,
just like, but
yeah,
it just doesn't look the part. Like, how cool would a Flying V have looked right there, or a
yeah,
Les Paul or something
exactly.
like that. But
Yeah,
and they don't, the kind of the hats and things like that. I don't know, but I
yeah.
really like the album. I think it's really good. And my number four is going to be Narita, which man, the band really finding their way on this, and maybe it's not the drop dead classic that Fire Down Under is, but it's not far off. I think the guitars kill on here. Waiting for the Taking is so good. I think Guy Speranza sounds amazing on here. He's to this day still my favorite singer in Riot. 49er Cranks, Kick Down the Wall. The title track is absolutely raging. Um, Here We Come Again, Do It Up, Hot for Love. I mean, it's just one winner after another. And yeah, the mascot is ridiculous, but you know what? It became their kind of like every Riot album has one, has them. So, whatever. But
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really good stuff. And I agree with, I think, one of the heavier albums of the decade for sure. And would totally foreshadow another album that's going to come not long afterwards, which to me is their crowning achievement. But that's my next three.
And look at these singers, right? Frank Domino, Rick Sanford, Rex Smith, Michael Lee Smith, and Guy Speranza. I mean, these are four of the most amazing, magnetic, amazing voices. Just the perfect range. Can sing high, just powerful, right? But
Yeah, we haven't
yeah,
talked about that yet today. We got to give credit to all these vocalists. I mean, there's some really good singers in this catalog. I mean, I
yeah,
think Rick Derringer too, also a really good
yeah,
singer, right? I mean, I don't
yeah,
have that much great things to say about the guy in the Gods, but he's
yeah,
not terrible either. But I think all these other bands have just some tremendous, tremendous vocalists. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. But Legs Diamond, when they're hiring Rick Sanford, they're probably looking at this list of vocalists. Man, he's got flute by his name. He told us if we hire him, we gotta have some flute on these
I have some
albums. He's
flute,
like,
right?
oh
And he's gonna
man,
play it at
all
the
right, but he's
weirdest
so
moment.
good. What do we do?
I know
Yeah.
it's very strange when you hear it though, but I don't mind it because I love the flute, but it's just like
Oh, I can't
when it
stand
comes in, you're kind of like, whoa, where did that come from? So
Yeah, yeah, funny. Okay, so my top three. My third is Sweet Evil. Love this album to death, and I know we got heck for saying that in the comments, but I played this a lot. I wrote up the whole story of this album, interviewed all these guys about it. I got to see the first Derringer reunion gig. They played in Buffalo after 35 years away. It was literally that exact band. It was so cool. But yeah, this also is basically an Aerosmith album. It's just got all the variety of the funk metal and the fast stuff and a little bit of pop, but basically good quality heavy metal. Sitting by the Pool is just such an absolute drop dead classic. Yeah, the drumming's amazing on here from Vinny. And yeah, everything about it, just the good pacing on it, as well as just a good quality. I find Jack Douglas's production on here to be a little bit I don't know, combination of maybe the odd thing that you're not crazy about, Get Your Wings or Draw the Line or whatever. It's not quite up to Rock's standards, but yeah, just basically this is a good solid Aerosmith album. Now my number two choice. Remember, I talked about me being a poser. Every single one of these bands. So I'm not a poser with every single one of these bands except this one, because I hated their pop direction, right? I loved when Derringer went pop. I just find this album to have so much charm and interesting stuff and a little bit of a sense of humor and just really tasteful. So I was happy that they did this. But to do this, they kind of had to cheat, because basically Gone is Danny Johnson and Gone is Vinny Appice, and Kenny Aronson's still with Rick, and you've got Myron Grombacher. So you've got really just three guys listed as part of the band. It's produced by Mike Chapman, which kind of makes sense because it's got a little bit of that glam sweet sort of thing. It's poppy and hooky, but I just I love the production on it. Period. I mean, it's not a very heavy metal production, but yeah, this is the one time one of these bands went kind of poppy, and I was completely on board. And every other time, no. Hate that album title. If I weren't so romantic, I'd shoot you. It has such a Joe Walsh kind of vibe to it, right?
Yeah,
With a
it does.
title
Yeah,
like that, right? And that,
kind of
at
jokey.
Lawyers, Guns of Money on here. Warren Zevon is on here, which is really cool. There's a song called Rockarola, kind of weird, right? Given Judas Priest, but yeah, Attitude, Monomania, just a lot of really good, fun stuff on here. And then, of course, after this, he becomes Rick Derringer and does Guitars and Women, and I love that album too. I might even like that more than Sweet Evil, and that is quite poppy. But the amazing thing about that one, and I know I've mentioned this before, but the two heaviest songs on there are probably Derringer's heaviest songs ever, and they're both written by Rick Nielsen, which is pretty
Go
bizarre,
figure, right?
right? Yeah, they're really cool. So yeah, the Rick Derringer album, Guitars and Women, I think is the sister album to this, more than like the Sweet Evil and Derringer go together, and then Guitars and Women and this go together. My number one is Hell of a Band, Angel. Love this album. A lot of people pick the debut. This, with that stupid title, Hell of a Band, it really undercuts how classy and cool and Deep Purple-esque this album is, and still very proggy, but they've shortened up the songs a little bit. We got 9 songs this time. But I think the likes of Mirrors, Feelings, Pressure Point, and Feeling Right, and even The Fortune are way up there, as they'd be in my top 7 or 8 Angel songs. They're really good, heavy, crushing, heavy sound on this album as well, produced by Derek Lawrence and Big Jim Sullivan. They hated working with those guys. And they just didn't feel like those guys were doing much work, and they were drinking a lot and all this stuff. So they didn't like the match, but I think they got a good job out of them, because this is the bruising, aggressive, heavy sounding album, and I think the songs are really quite heavy as well on it. Reprised Angel theme, yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, Mirrors, Feeling Right, Pressure Point. Pressure Point is like their Cast the First Stone on here. So yeah, my number one, Angel. So Sweet Evil, If I Weren't So Romantic, I'd Shoot You. Hell of a band.
All right. My number 3 is going to be the Starz debut, which I think is
Okay.
pretty damn terrific. I dig the sound of the album. The guitar sounds are great. The vocals are great. Some really good, concise rocking stuff on here. I mean, She's Just a Fallen Angel, so good. Detroit Girls, Live Wire, Tear It Down. Yeah, over and over, pull the plug. Just really good I can't stress it enough. This album should have been enormous. It's got Stars, and that's the name of the band, but they should have been Stars. And I love the logo. Next to Angel, probably one of the coolest logos you'll ever see. Very good stuff. Yeah, that's my number 3. Awesome album. Number 2, I'm gonna go with it was tough between my top 2, but Hell of a Band is my number 2. Everything he said is great. Love it. It's definitely slightly less proggy than the debut, but there's still lots of that here. Feeling Right is a great track. I mean, The Fortune is like the sequel to The Tower. Both of them are kind of in the same ballpark. Really good. Any Way You Want, it's great. Pressure Points, Mirrors is just a terrific, terrific track. Chicken Soup. I mean, the whole thing, top to bottom, is really good. It's a nice, heavy album, slightly proggy. Again, God, can you imagine how much cooler these albums would have been, the first 2 with the logo?
Yeah.
Because it's a great cover. I think it's a really good cover. They
Yeah.
look like $1 million too. It's just awesome stuff. That's my number
Yeah.
2. My number 1, I'm going to go with the debut.
Yeah.
Love it. I mean, Tower is immense. Even for that song alone, probably would drive this up here. But man, Mariner is so good. Rock and Rollers, Broken Dreams, Long Time is just a great rocker. Yeah, love the Angel theme. Wish it was longer. On and On is just the vocals on that are just tremendous. Frank is just singing up a storm on here. But I love the fact that they're basically, they're on Casablanca Records, but the label really let them do what they wanted to do. And I think, you mentioned something earlier when talking about this album and this band. Really, you have to wonder, because by 1975, prog is kind of already like seen as like dinosaur music. And you have to wonder if this album was just a little bit too proggy for folks who are getting into it. Because I could think like folks who are really into Kiss would probably think, oh, there's too much keyboards on here. The songs are too long. And it's not really that vibe they were looking for. So you have to wonder if like Angel comes out in like 73, maybe we'd see something a little bit different here as far as like the success of this band. I don't know, but I love it. I think these two albums are masterpieces and just so important uh, to maybe you mentioned progressive metal, right? Going forward, we don't really give them any credit for that, but I think a lot of the seeds of what we saw a lot of prog metal bands doing 20 years later could be go back to this album. So awesome stuff.
It's funny. I made the point. I think I made the point in the book, but or maybe I thought about this later. But I thought they had very bland song titles. This band as well. Broken Dreams, Mariner, On and On,
Feelings.
Sunday Morning,
Sunday.
Long Time. Right?
Long
It's like
time.
everything's telling you don't listen to these songs. Right?
Feeling right.
Yeah. Chicken
Feeling
Soup.
right. It's Saturday night. Yeah. All right.
Chicken
Yeah.
Soup. Yeah. Angel Theme. Right?
Yeah.
You know, Angel Theme, lowercase theme in parentheses on the first album cover, on the back of the second, all caps. Any way you want it, Dr. Ice, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny, but
It is kind of generic sounding. Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
I don't
Very
know.
cool. Yeah. Well, theme wise, I obviously we had a massive difference with the Oddball Derringer album, and I also noticed that I kind of put the Legs Diamond albums a little lower. I was a little more. I was less forgiving, I think, on Riot and Legs Diamond when it came to having personality, kind of thing. It's a weird thing that's bothered these, but yeah. Otherwise, I think we lined up pretty closely here.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that we both really value some of the Angel and Starz catalog. I think that was pretty obvious, and Narita by Riot as well. So
Yeah,
the other
and
stuff
Ram
is
Jam, Portrait of the Artist as a young Ram.
there you
Absolutely.
go. All right, Martin, what do you got going on your end with the Contrarians of the podcast and new books? You got a few new things coming in, right?
Yeah, podcast. Last week's was called "Joke About the Police." That's History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. We did the Contrarians about the album covers thing again. And this week, yesterday, I got a new book out. Led Zeppelin: A Visual Biography, hardcover, full color throughout. That's now also at my website with the PayPal buttons, martinpopoff.com. And then earlier in the week, this one came out. You'll be getting one of these from the publisher directly. Van Halen at 50 from Motor Books. And, you've reviewed these. You've done the Ozzy and the Cooper, which I didn't write, right? The same kind of thing, right? And the Kiss at 50. And so this is a series they got going, but my new Van Halen at 50, and that's also at my website. And I have a supply of both of these. And I think I've got these 3 or 4 weeks ahead of Amazon even this time. So
No, that's always good.
pretty
That's
cool.
always good.
So that's what's going on.
And for those of you who haven't gotten it yet, but maybe are waiting for me to talk about it and show it off, I'll be reviewing Martin's panel book on Thin Lizzy probably next Wednesday. So be on the lookout for that. So yeah, we'll be doing another one of these next week. We're going back to thrash next week in the '90s. Is that what we're doing next week, Martin?
I thought we were doing the Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, all that stuff in the '80s.
That's right. Yeah, because we
That one
yeah,
in
we
the
haven't
80s.
gotten back to that yet. So that'll be next week. So we got so many of these kind of like in the planning stages. So and these seem to be pretty popular. So yeah, so we'll be throwing those 4 bands once again into the mix and doing the '80s albums, moving off from the '70s. So
Yeah, Aerosmith, Kiss, Ted Nugent, Blue Oyster Cult, right?
yep.
Yeah. What did they get up to in the '80s? Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah, because for some people the '80s albums are terrible. For some people, there's some good gems in there, right? So we'll be trying to figure that out as well. So that's next week. And let's see what's coming up later today. We got Ken Golden coming in for the Professor's Picks. Stay tuned for that 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow is the review crew. Jamie Laszlo's back in tow, leading the crew. He's got Karen La Preziosa, Ryan Scow, Rick Labonte. Is that the whole crew? I'm trying to remember who else was on that. I think so. Am I missing someone? No, I think that's the crew. So that's coming up on Saturday, tomorrow, and Sunday. I'll be ranking the albums of Steve Vai. So that's coming up this weekend, plus a few other surprises. So till then, Visit us on the web at
How the
www.
hell are you going to do Steve Vai? That just blows my mind. That's
Uh, you
going
know,
through those and figuring them out. I just look at that stack sitting on my shelf and it's like, oh my god, I need weeks to figure this out. Man,
thankfully, most of them I know very, very well. There's a few
wow,
that are kind of like
for
really out there
you.
that I got to revisit, but yeah, for the most part, it's I've been putting it off for ages. You know, anytime you have to review like a whole instrumental catalog like that, like Satriani is another one. Everybody's asking, do a Satriani album ranking. I'm like, oh my God, because to me, so
Yeah.
many of Satch's out sound exactly the same. So how do you like differentiate them? At least with the Vi albums, they're all kind of really different. Some are really weird, some are a little more straightforward. So I don't think it'll be that difficult.
Yeah,
But
he gets on his philosophical tangents and goes off all over the place, right? But the only
yeah,
ones I know well are Flexible and Sex and Religion, and that's it.
not even Passion and Warfare. That's I mean, I played that
And
to
not
death.
even that. No.
No, all right. Yeah, I mean, Sex and Religion is weird because that's more kind of song based, right? So that's really
Bye.
different
Yeah.
compared to all the other
It's his
stuff.
Derringer album. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week here at the Funhouse. This is on the web at www. Did I say all that already? Yeah, whatever. I'll skip it. You already know it. So thanks for watching. For Martin Popoff, I'm Pete Pardo. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and see you soon. Bye bye.